State of the Industry podcast. And here we go. This episode is brought to you by KP Movement Education, your source for health and movement education and coaching. Whether you are a health or fitness professional, a fitness consumer, or perhaps a passive bystander, KP believes that everyone deserves the right to pain-free movement. That's why their memberships and services are designed to educate, empower, and inspire you to create a culture of movement for yourself and those around you. With 2 membership options, you'll find education surrounding developing at-home training programs for yourself or for others, mental health and exercise, lifestyle medicine, and much, much more. Check it out at kineticperformance.ca/memberships. That's kineticperformance.ca/memberships. Hey, FitFam, welcome back to the State of the Industry podcast. I am your host, Adam Youngsma. Our guest this week has been a mentor of mine, both personally and professionally, since we first met near the beginning of my career, sat down in a Starbucks here in Toronto, and I am lucky enough now to call him a close friend of mine. He is Dai Manuel. Dai is a dad and a husband first and foremost, and this is evident if you ever hear him speak or you creep him on social media. Dai has spent the past several years traveling the world with his family and coaching his tribe and clients virtually, sometimes poolside from their place in Bali. In addition, he's also an award-winning digital thought leader and author of the Whole Life Fitness Manifesto. He's a distinguished Toastmaster and keynote speaker, former partner and chief operating officer of a multi-million-dollar fitness equipment retail company, and a sought-after lifestyle mentor and executive performance coach. His coaching is based on 5 F's: fitness, family, faith, and finances, with an overarching roof of fun. And his energy and optimism are contagious. I have had the pleasure of sitting in on many of his conference sessions, and I think I consume the content he puts out about as quickly as he can create it. Hopefully, through our discussion during the podcast, Dai can help inspire you to be your best self and in turn assist you in helping others do the same. Let's dive in. All right, welcome to the State of the Industry podcast, Dai. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you, Adam. I'm super stoked to be here. I'm glad that we've had some time before we hit record to sort of catch up. I mean, it's been a lot of years since we last got to hang out. So this is really exciting.
I know, it's been a long time. It's actually, I still remember back to the first time that we sat down. It was at the CanFit Pro World Fitness Expo, and we went to, I believe we went to a Starbucks just kind of down the street, and we sat and chatted. And that was my first time. And at that time, and this is going to sound bad, I didn't actually know who you were. I was just told that from CanFit Pro that I had to speak with you. And from that discussion, just the kindness of, kind of what you said, because you actually are a huge mentor of mine throughout the years. Like, we've had a lot of conversations about business, actually even just pre this call, about business, about structuring. And so like, I'm hugely thankful for that opportunity when I was actually pushed to speak with you, and that we've been able to maintain this over several years, and hanging out, going for dinners in Vancouver a couple of times. And so, I just wanted to thank you for coming on and taking some time to share some of your expertise.
Well, I really appreciate that, Adam. And, it's been, it's fun to reconnect because I'm finally back in North America. So we're on somewhat of a similar time zone, which is nice, makes things a little bit easier. But also, more importantly, I'm just honored to be a guest on your show because, to be quite honest, it is full circle, and it's just neat to also see how your platform has grown and developed, both organically, but also just with a whole pile of hard work and focus. And so I just want to commend you and what you're doing for the industry as a whole. It's especially now during these times. I mean, it's needed even more so. We need strong leaders that are willing to shine a light and lead, and show us where the little potholes are, so we can, overstep those or step to the side to avoid them. And so I see the content you're creating is really doing a lot for people like myself in this industry that, well, you can't have a short supply of knowledge, right? Like
Yeah.
we all need a little bit more help. And
Yeah.
so it's really cool to see you creating content that's really helping a lot of people.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's
that's
been,
awesome.
yeah, as you said, a lot of hard work, a lot of hours. And I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
oftentimes people don't maybe recognize the amount of time and the amount of effort that
Mm,
goes in. They just see the finished product, right? So
right.
even with the
Right.
stuff that you put together, because I know I've been to a few of your conference sessions
Mm-hmm.
out in the Vancouver Canfit Pro. I think was the first time I ever sat in on one
Yes.
of your marketing or social media conference sessions. And yeah, just the amount of work that you've put in. I know I've sat in on a few of the free webinars that you've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just, man, the amount of notes that I have from that from that session alone, and that was a
Yeah.
free session, so I could only
I know.
like, yeah, so
Drink
yeah,
from the
lots of
fire
work.
hose, right?
Oh
Like
my gosh.
it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
laugh at that too, man. It's sometimes when I get excited, I forget that I've been doing this for 14 years.
Yeah.
Well, I've been in the fitness space for now my 25 years,
Yeah.
25th year of making money in the fitness and wellness space, but really in the marketing side of things, 14 years of content generation, and I forget about how much you just gain just by doing,
Yeah.
right, just by going through the process
Yeah.
and making a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
you gotta anyways, yeah, thanks for that little trip down memory lane.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit, I think I'm a little bit hard-headed with that. I'm a like, I'll watch YouTube or I'll go to a conference session, but I
Yeah.
won't necessarily ask for help all that often. It'll be a
Mm,
trial and error thing, which actually takes a
right.
lot more time. And that's
Sure.
my stubbornness. It takes a
Mm,
lot more time to do the things. And oftentimes you get frustrated and then you kind of throw it around like to the wayside and then you start with something else.
yeah.
And so that's actually kind of where I want to take this entire conversation is
Cool.
pulling a little bit of your expertise in many areas, from social media marketing
Mm,
to talking about automation of pretty much everything that you do, from emails to websites to even
mm,
monetization of memberships and those types of
mhm,
things. And then just about the tribe, like you talk about
mm,
tribe all the time. Like you are the
yeah.
first person who I ever heard that from, is creating a tribe.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I just want to, like, I want to get into all of that, because then we can help save other PTs or other
yes.
content creators from making the same mistakes that I make constantly still, because I'm also, I'm a difficult learner when it comes to that, apparently. So, uh, so that kind of brings me to kind of the first question that I have for you is,
Yeah.
for people who don't maybe necessarily know what you do, can you
Mm,
just walk us through kind of one, your path through the industry so far, so the past
mm,
25
sure.
years to kind of 14 years ago when you started doing a lot more marketing,
Yeah.
and kind of what you actually do, because you have, like, when I look on Instagram at
Mhm.
your profile and it goes through all the things that you do, I'm like, all right, that like, that's a lot of things that I really
Mm,
want to know more about.
right.
So can you just kind of walk through that process and what you
Sure.
do?
Yeah, well, it's gosh, i- it's an interesting question, isn't it? I always laugh at that, well, only because being someone that's been working as an entrepreneur for so long, uh, we often get asked that question. What do you
Mm-hmm.
do? And I've always struggled to answer it succinctly. The only reason being is I tend to find that I have a lot of things that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
And I always feel that if I give an answer, will that limit my potential? Will it limit the stuff I can do? Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like as soon as you say it, well, now you got to own it and you got to walk into that and
Yeah.
live that, and now people are going to expect you to continue to just do that. And
That
so
almost
it's
becomes the defining feature, right?
well, that's just
Yeah.
right, right, right. It becomes this like a cornerstone, right? It
Yeah.
becomes this part of how we define who we are, and it just seems like such a big question. And so I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible with this response. But I didn't naturally come to fitness or the industry as a whole naturally. Uh, Only because from the age of 9 to 14, I was classified as morbidly obese. Like I was a really
Mm-hmm.
big kid, and I got there all on my own volition. Like I'm not going to point fingers. I'm not going to give any excuses, but I just overate, and a lot of, very nutrition poor foods, high in calorie. And I played a lot of video games, watched a lot of movies, and I was the cliche, but back then, I'm 43 now. So if you go back in the day of how many years ago this was, when I was 14, 15 at my largest, childhood and obesity weren't really two words that would typically be associated to each other. Not like today, we recognize it's a global issue, right? And it's one of the things that I speak up on quite often, but it's also a big motivator for why I do what I do. Is I see the state of unhealth globally, and I think we're all hyper aware of this, especially right now with the pandemic, and because it's just tip of the tongue. It's everywhere right now. We're talking about health in different capacities, and what happens when we lose it, or we lose the ability to maintain it. And I made some changes. It took about 20 months, but almost before my 18th birthday, I had just stepped into this new way of living my life. I was active every day, just moving my body with purpose. I was fueling myself to thrive rather simply feeding myself to survive, looking for those instant gratification moments of eating ice cream or eating those things that create that little bit of a dopamine hit where I get, oh, that felt good. And then, 10 minutes later, like, oh, I want some more, I just had to put an end to that cycle. And going through that process, and this is really what got me into the wellness industry and the fitness industry, was going through this personal change myself. There was people there that supported me, that coached me, that mentored me. There was the library was a big piece, and my kids laugh. I'm like, yeah, I'm older than Google. And, I went to the library. I got books out on nutrition and on fitness. And I remember reading those. I remember reading Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, right? Like some of the old Weider principles and some of their old books and magazines. And, today, there's even fewer excuses because we have so much information and almost too much, right? So decision fatigue is a real thing. We're faced with too many choices, and we can only exercise that muscle so many times in a day. And once we flexed it, it's like, oh, it's done. I got to wait till tomorrow before I can even think about other things. And so on that note, going through my own personal changes, there's people that helped me along the way. And then all of a sudden, I started living those changes, started gaining a lot of extra confidence, which people find when you have your health. It's amazing how we feel less stressed, feel more able to do cool things. And the likelihood of saying yes is much more because we feel confident that by saying yes, we can actually follow through with it. It's, oh, you want to go hike, or you want to try stand-up paddleboarding, or you want to try this new sport you've never even thought about doing before. Well, yeah, I'm like a yes, I'll try it. Sure. I may not be good at it, but I'll try it because I know I have at least the foundation that I can.
Yeah.
And so it's that confidence that I got really excited in helping other people maintain, or not even maintain, but get. And people started asking me for help, like even friends of my parents, people that were more than twice my age, saying, "Dai, my gosh, you can you help me? I want to make some changes." And this was my first taste of coaching, of mentorship, of other people, like supporting others in these types of transformations. And I got really excited because for once in my life, people were taking me seriously and actually listening to what I had to say, which was that was a new thing. I never had that experience before. And I was like, wow, they really care about what I say. They're going to do this stuff, and I can help create a positive result for them. Wow. Imagine if I could do this every day. And hence, that got me into fitness, eventually becoming a personal trainer and a coach, and got into rock climbing and belaying and helping people with that. And then got into kickboxing and spin classes. And, just, what happens. People get the bug, and they're like, this is going to be part of my life. I'm going to do whatever I can to stay here. But, fast forward a few years later, getting into my early 20s, moved out to Vancouver from Toronto. And, life happens. You realize that there's only so many hours in a week, and sometimes you got to learn how to prioritize certain things. And I realized that I was committing so much to fitness and trying to help others that at some point in time, I was putting my own needs on the back burner. Right. And I think there's probably people listening to this like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, yeah. I'll go work on that, and then I'll work on me. And then, that me part never seems to get to the front burner, just stays on that back burner. And I eventually found myself, I went in to buy a heavy bag because I was into kickboxing and boxing. And so I wanted a heavy bag for home, and went into a local Vancouver company and befriended the manager there who was selling the fitness equipment and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing something like this?" And I was like, "Well, no. What does that mean?" And it was commissioned, commissioned sales environment. I'd never worked in that kind of a thing before.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of exciting, Adam, because you're like, the more people I help, the more people I can help find a fitness equipment solution to help change their lives, the more people that I can help do that, you're going to pay me more. And they're like, "Oh, yeah." I'm like, well, I want to impact as many people as I can. Let's go. And I excelled very, very quickly at that. I realized that I had this ability to serve people in that capacity very, very well.
Yeah.
And I started to be remunerated very, very well for that. And so I found that most of my time now, I went away from personal training, especially the one-on-one side of things, even the coaching, running classes, all that stuff started to just say no to that, because I started looking at my time. Where was the better use of my time? Professional time. So the time that I generate income with. And I didn't want to add more hours, because at the same time, I was just getting into a serious relationship, starting to have kids a couple years later, so time was the one asset I realized I only had so much of.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get any more of it. Like once it was gone, it was gone. And I was like, okay, well, how am I going to invest future time? And so I went all in on this sales side of things and excelled very quickly. And a few years later, had an opportunity to split off and start a separate new company in the same industry, but separate from the national chain. And I could be a co-founder and help build that as a founder, as an owner, as someone that's going to be in a very senior role and help scale. And I was like, okay, I'm all in. Let's do this. And that was literally 17 years of my adult life and working in that capacity, selling fitness equipment commercially in retail environments. We had 8 retail stores, a couple B2B enterprises, manufacturing overseas, warranty companies, delivery companies, service companies. Like it was a lot of work, but I learned a lot, and it was amazing until it wasn't. And so just a little over 5 years ago, got to a point, I was like, you know what, kind of wanting to change. Because if I go back, like I said, 14 years ago, I had a bit of a split where I was building our commercial brand, our company's brand. And so for people like yourself, Adam, you yourself are a brand.
Yeah.
You yourself as an individual have certain beliefs and operating systems within and value systems that help you dictate how you invest your time and your energies, and it guides you. But you also have a corporate professional brand. And sometimes these two align and sometimes they don't, right? And I realized very quickly after going down the path of learning as much as I could from a guy by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, who I know you know who he is, and people that are listening, it's like, if you don't know who he is, look him up. Very prolific marketer, and he really owns the space. As soon as you search him once, he'll follow you everywhere because of the retargeting campaigns. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I read his first printing of a book called Crush It, and it changed my perspective on marketing. It changed my perspective on where I felt the world was going. Some of the things he was speaking about was very novel, very new, and was going against the grain of what a lot of us believed at the time, which was like, oh, TV, print, radio, even local events, like all those things. And he was saying, well, listen, you can leverage time a lot more effectively, make a greater impact, and serve a greater audience if you start leveraging these amazing things called social media channels, or social platforms. And so I really got excited about that and started to dive into that. And I realized I needed to start developing my own personal brand alongside of the corporate brand that we were building, because my personal opinions didn't always line up with the corporate opinions. And so there was this bit of a split. And during that time of building my personal brand, within a few years, it outgrew our corporate brand. I had greater impact because, we were only branding our retail locations, which had a geographical location. You could only serve so many people. So it was hyper targeted, where my personal brand, I didn't have any more boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think this is what a lot of trainers have been experiencing. Some have sort of tripped and fallen into this or felt forced into it, but you started to focus more efforts online and online marketing and building online systems to now serve clients. You realize that, oh, I can have a client in London, England, or I can have one in Bali, Indonesia, or I can have one in Brisbane, Australia. You're no longer dealing with all the extra objections of working with people cross borders, because that's how the world operates now.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. The limiting factor is always us, right? It's never what we're actually trying to do, but it's just the limiting factors that we put on ourselves. And so yeah, I made some changes, and my wife was very encouraging and really the one helping me feel confident that we were on the right path, believing that we can do this together and we can go off. And so Christy helped edit my book, The Whole Life Fitness Manifesto, which released about 5 years ago. At the same time, I was just stepped away from my career. A month later, she stepped away from hers. We pulled the kids out of school a few months after that, gave away all of our stuff, packed up an SUV, whatever we couldn't fit, we said bye to, and we started traveling. And, we didn't really have a lot of savings. We had invested a lot of that in other things and other vehicles. And, but I had enough coming in from what I was doing online, which was working with various brands, doing speaking engagements, as well as coaching clients online. I had enough coming in from that if we downsized our lifestyle, right, which I actually feel we upstyled our lifestyle, only from the standpoint we became less focused on things and more focused on experiences.
Yeah.
And relationships and community and connection. Those became our currency of choice. And in doing so, we realized we actually didn't need as much cash coming in to sustain that. And this is a very positive experience for us, because before that point, it was really easy to say, well, I got 2 kids, I got a home, we got 2 vehicles. Like we have all this stuff and all these responsibilities. There's no way I can leave my career right now, because it's a very comfortable income.
Yeah.
I know it really well. I could do this in the next 20 or 30 years. And I know we'd be absolutely fine. We'll have a great life, but do I want to do it the next 20 or 30 years? Is that really what I want?
Yep.
And that was the scariest part, was actually coming to that realization that it wasn't what I wanted anymore. And I think a lot of people feel this, if you feel stuck in a career, you keep doing it, but it's like, I just don't see any other out. Even if I switch industries right now, I'm starting at the bottom again. Oh my goodness. And I've worked so hard to get to this certain level, to reach this certain status within an industry. It can be very, very scary to think about leaving that. And trust me, I had a lot of fear, a lot of doubts, a lot of concerns. But and this is how I'll end this piece, is it got to a point where I was more afraid of the idea of continuing doing what I was doing. Yeah. And then being in a position 20 years later and reflecting back, my wife and I sitting there saying, hey, remember that 20 years ago we thought about going off and chasing our dream of being a full-time family and traveling the world? Like, sheesh, remember that? Yeah. Geez, I really wish we did that. I was more afraid of that conversation than I was afraid of the conversation of saying, forget it. Let's both quit our jobs. Let's do this thing. Let's try it. Yeah. That I was less afraid of that, because really at the end of the day, and Tim Ferriss talks about this in his TED talk, he talks about fear setting, this idea of trying to rationalize fear. And the best way to do that is really start asking yourself, well, what is the worst thing that could happen? And Christy and I both agreed, the worst thing that could happen is we run out of money and we got to go move in with one of our parents and find jobs and just rebuild. That's the worst. I'm like, we're both very employable. I think that's okay. We can handle that, And so away we went, and we haven't looked back since. So it's that's sort of been the journey. And now what do? Well, I support others both on their personal development, but also on professional development. And I support them through coaching, through mentorship, even at times going into their businesses with them and helping them restructure and create the systems and the operations, because that is my background, as well as the marketing. And, once you get all those pieces working for you, it's amazing how it creates the space to focus on the things that you really love. Yeah. And I think that's what we're all striving for. We want to do more of the things that we love, less of the things that we don't. And in a way, be able to continue on that path of chasing the vision, right? Yeah. Whatever the vision is we have for our lives, I think we always need a vision. We always need a direction that we're going. But it's a lot more empowering to feel that we're actively going a direction because we chose to. Yeah. Not because we have to. And,
Yeah.
it's like, I get to do this. I get to celebrate this. My wife reminds me of this all the time. She is a perpetual optimistic kind of person. And, to the point that, and she's probably within earshot. She can probably hear this, but at times it can be a bit overwhelming because it's like, I just want to have a pity party. I don't want to, like, just let me enjoy my bitchiness right now. And
Yeah.
but she'll be very quick to just shift that perspective so quickly. And we all need that kind of a cheerleader in our lives.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what I do, and I still do a lot of speaking. A little bit less. I had a number of talks like yourself, Adam. I had events canceled this year or rescheduled for next year, but a number of them also pivoted to online. So I've been in the last few weeks. I've done 2 keynotes, but they were all virtual. Like very different, but it's the world we live in. You got to be able to be flexible and willing to adapt when you need to. So yeah, that's it, man. I'm like I said, I'm a dad of 2 beautiful teenage girls. They're 15 and 17. I've been dating my wife for 20 years. And those, when you look at my Instagram, are the very first 2 things I list because quite frankly, those are the most important titles in my life, So yeah, that's it. I mean, that's basically a 9-minute preamble of how I got to where I am right now. Obviously we can get into the weeds a bit, but that's sort of the 10,000 foot view.
Yeah. And I love that because that was actually when I first went on your Instagram way back when we first met. Actually, maybe even before we met, because I was wanting to do some pre-research before I actually talked to you. That was the first actually thing that caught my eye. And I always love that saying, like dating my wife, right? I just love that because like my wife and I are the same way. Now, we haven't been married for 20 years. It's only been just over a year, but we think in the exact same way of like, of constantly, like, don't get in this rut of this is life now. It's like the life is dating, and dating is still a thing. And, making sure that you have time for just you and your wife, that you have time with each child individually and then as a group as well, I think is a really big thing for either current parents or aspiring parents to really understand that the family started when you got married. You're growing the family with kids, and like I think that concept is very important because each of those relationships constantly needs to be nurtured, or else the same thing will happen that could happen with your business or your clients, and like they just start to feel, oh, this is just routine now. It's nothing new. It's boring. It's like I made a few notes while you were talking because there was a lot in that, I guess it ended up being 10-minute preamble of what you do and how you do it. There was a lot in there that I kind of wanted to tease out, but the first is just kind of, I guess, 3 big points. So I had a conversation with Perry Nicholson, who I believe you're familiar with. Stop Chasing Pain. He's the guy who came up with that company, and he's just he is I don't like right in line with you, just a really good human being, right? Like just a phenomenal person as a whole. And he is so generous with his time, much like you are. And he's constantly just wanting to help people however he can. But one of the things that caught me not in the podcast that I did with him earlier on, but a different podcast that I listened to of his in preparation, was that he actually said that he was the one who was holding himself back from success in his own business because he was scared of the rejection that he might encounter if he stepped out and took that step, right? Yes. And I think what you said was the same kind of thing, right? And so reframing that fear, as you said, like that Tim Ferriss, which I've watched that TED Talk probably 2 or 3 times, because it's something that you constantly have to remind yourself of in whether you're a PT or you are like a business owner, like an educator, like I am, you're an educator and you're a coach, right? Like you constantly have to remind yourself when you're coming into a new situation, like what's the worst thing that can happen if I do take this step, if I do decide to open up this fitness facility, or if I do decide to leave this commercial gym and go to online training or this or that. So I think that's often something that we don't actually evaluate all that often in our own business is we almost like ride things out too long instead of asking the questions earlier about, is this actually what I want to end up doing? And not like you're going to change it immediately, but you're setting the stage and you're preparing for what's coming next. Yeah. So I just loved how you spoke to that all throughout that, that 9 or 10 minutes, that it was fearful. It was something that you had
Oh
to have a
man.
conversation about, right? Because
Yeah.
man, that's so uncomfortable being in a situation where you're like, I'm leaving my job. I'm
Oh,
stepping out to do something on my own. And
sheesh.
there's nothing that's guaranteed right now other than what you currently have online.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think that was one of the questions, like the big turning point between you going from, the co-founder of a fitness company that was selling equipment to just leaving everything and going online.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you had a place in Bali that you were in for a long
Mm-hmm.
time, and you still have that place, though you're here in Canada now. But yeah, just like I just think about, okay, could I, in my current state, like mindset, right? Thinking about
Mm-hmm.
mindset versus, my actual ability to do it, is like, could I pick up everything, or I guess drop
Mm-hmm.
everything
Yeah.
and go live in Bali and do what I wanted to do? And right now I'm not set up. And so that's what actually I want to use all of this for.
Yeah, I love it. Well,
Yeah.
just to, real quick on that, it's the life by design. You have to design it before you can optimize it.
Yeah.
And I think that is where I always relate it back to three P's. You first of all have to have a passion, and then you want to try to align that with your purpose. And hopefully once you've got those two things figured out, you can then create a process
Yeah.
or adhere to an already existing process. And I think that's the cool thing is we're seeing that there's a lot of amazing people out there with great expertises that can teach and support and mentor a lot of us through the
Yeah.
content they're creating and the courses they're creating. Like, just we have so much access to
Yeah.
to make the changes, so it makes that transition a
Mm-hmm.
little bit less fearful, a little
Yeah.
easier to say yes, but also be in a position where we feel confident in saying yes. Because it's one thing to say, yeah, maybe. Because I'll be frank with you, straight up here, it was 2 years from the time I had that first thought of like us doing this to the point when I actually had my last day of work.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. It wasn't like I made a decision next week I quit. Like I wish it was that quick, because it's the one thing that people often say is like, what is there anything you regret? And I'm regret I didn't make the leap sooner.
Yeah.
Like that is the one thing and you'll hear that often from people. It's like, especially people that
Yeah.
leave the corporate and move into the personal entrepreneurial space.
Yeah.
There's lots of fears there to overcome, but usually the one regret that always comes up is I just wish I did it sooner, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so yeah, I think it's beautiful, but it's also really cool to see you creating these systems now for your own business, because you have a vision of for you, your family, and that personal life, right? And
Yeah.
I think this is why a lot of us are attracted to the fitness industry. Is it's a great place to build a lifestyle business, a
Yeah.
business that supports the life that we want to be living, versus compromising our life and lifestyle to fit a career.
Yeah.
Which is, I felt very much in that space, especially the last few years. Like I had to compromise a lot of the things that I wanted in my life in order
Yeah.
to satisfy the responsibilities that I signed up for, that I
Mhm.
committed to. Like, I don't begrudge my work.
Yeah.
I said yes. They hired me to do a role. I did that role. And unfortunately, I outgrew that and I wasn't feeling fulfilled any longer.
Yeah.
And I could not deal with that any longer.
Yeah.
You've probably seen the movie Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
And I share this every once in a while in my presentations where I talk about, I had a Jerry Maguire moment. I wrote a personal manifesto that was 14 pages long. I wrote it on a plane ride from Vancouver to Toronto when I was going out to visit my mom, because I was burnt out from work. I got burnt out. I was like, I need a couple weeks just to go and recover and recuperate. But I felt inspired that I wanted to get clarity in my life. So I wrote a personal manifesto. And in that, I shared all the personal ambitions and goals that I had for my life over the next 5 years. But I also talked about the company and where I envisioned the company going over the next 5 years. Unfortunately, my business partner at the time never even read it.
Hmm.
And that was when I made the decision, this is no longer the path for me.
Yeah.
Was that was the one incident that I still haven't, and I don't really harbor negative feelings around anymore, but I was hurt.
Yeah.
I was really hurt at the time,
Yeah.
because I worked with him for 17 years. He was my first real professional mentor.
Yeah.
And I presume that it would have got more attention than it did.
Yeah.
And so it was ultimately that straw that
Yeah.
broke the camel's back, as the cliche says.
Yeah.
And but I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Because had we actually looked at, I think life would be very different today. I probably wouldn't have lived in Bali for 2.5 years,
Yeah.
like it just, everything happens for a reason. I
Yep.
will continue to believe that.
Yep.
But we have to realize we give it reason.
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl,
Yeah.
Man's Search for Meaning, most profound book I've ever read. If people haven't read that book, please read it. Viktor Frankl, he's the father of logotherapy. So it's really all about living a purpose-filled life and chasing life to feel fulfilled, choosing that path of enlightenment, if you will, or whatever fulfills you, and getting aligned with your purpose.
Yeah.
Like as Simon Sinek says, what's your why, right?
Yep.
Start with why. And so there's all these great thought leaders. And when you align with that, wow, it's pretty powerful what you can do. Because it does give you incredible clarity, and with clarity comes confidence, and with confidence comes purposeful action.
Yeah.
So it's like, just get out of your own way, right?
Yeah.
And and me, I'm very good at getting my own way. So I speak to this from both sides of the fence. Okay.
I think we all are. I think we're all really good at getting in our own way.
Crazy, right? Yeah. Crazy. Anyway, so here we are. Thank goodness.
So you brought up a big thing, because this is actually one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Is you mentioned that it took about 2 years to finally go from like when you kind of made the decision that that's what you wanted to do to actually leaving.
Yeah.
And so you say you regret not leaving earlier. So can you just walk through kind of
Sure
what could have happened, but also what challenges that you faced in that time, both professionally and like with your family, because that's a big decision to make as a professional, as a father with a family. That's a big decision to make. Yes. And I know you involve your family in every single thing that you do. But just kind of walk through some of those challenges that you faced.
Yeah. So thanks for asking it and framing it that way. Cause I've worked with a number of my own clients and just also friends, that are sort of find themselves in this transitionary period in their own lives, where they're especially right now in the last few months, there's been a lot of people like, geez, my industry is going to change forever. I don't know if I want to be in this industry anymore. I might want to do something different, and they're looking at this period of time as an opportunity to actually treat that very seriously, because there is a bit of space created right now. As much as there is stress and anxiety along with it, there is also just space to actually, if we give ourselves time to sit and reflect and actually ask some tough questions, there's opportunity to find clarity, and at least some direction on next steps. And for myself, I mean, the biggest challenge is I was in a senior role. I was a shareholder and minor shareholder. I wasn't like the majority shareholder. I was more of the workhorse, and my partner was the finance guy, right? He was the money guy. And he was also 20 years my senior. So he had all that extra years of income generation and business development and just wisdom, right? So we were in very different situations in life. His kids were at the point just going off to university. My kids are just, getting into grade school. So very different stages of life.
Yeah.
However, going through that process of really asking myself, these are things I'm really passionate about. Could I actually potentially earn an income doing some of these things? Like speaking, I remember, a lot of people, they speak at Canfit Pro in our industry, or at least they want to, because it's a wonderful venue. It's a great audience. It's a community of like-minded individuals. So I remember aspiring to that initially and doing some free talks initially. And then eventually, once they see the value and they have a program where they remunerate speakers.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this is kind of cool. I can actually make a little bit of money and get some travel covered, and wow, this could be a regular thing. This is kind of cool. And I know this, Adam. This is like your life. So you speak all over the world, man. But there's a great deal of satisfaction from that, and you can actually earn a really good income from that. But I didn't want that to be my only income. I wanted to do other things. I wanted to speak more. I wanted to work with charities. I wanted to have a little bit more freedom of time, so I wasn't working the traditional 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or also the weekends or the holidays, like we worked in retail. You don't close in retail, there's retail spaces, and when the doors aren't open, we're not paying rent, but we're getting charged rent. So your mentality in retail is very different. And so for many years, I didn't take Christmas holidays. I just didn't, because that's when we made hay. Anybody in the fitness space knows come January 1st, there's a lot of people very motivated to make some lifestyle changes.
Maybe short-term motivation, but yes,
short-term, yes. But we know there's industry trends, and so you have to be on deck to do your best within those peak periods. And So it just got to a point though, that was 2 years before. Why there was 2 years was I was in a senior role. I was a partner. I knew it was a role that couldn't be replaced within 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So I felt responsible
Yeah.
to be able to give adequate notice. And so I actually gave just over a year's notice when
Okay.
it finally came down to having that conversation saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this.
Yeah.
And it originally was just going to be a 1 year sort of taking a year off from the business
Yeah.
to travel with the family. But as we got closer and closer to the day of us actually leaving, my wife and I realized that, it's not going to be a year. It's not going to be 2 years. It's not going to be 10 years. It's like, I
Yeah.
don't envision me ever going back to this.
Yeah. It's
And
life
then
now.
that was the introspection though, that really had to happen.
Yeah.
Like I had to get absolutely certain that this was really what I wanted.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us have ideas of something that we want. We see somebody's post on Instagram and like, oh, that sounds really cool. I'd really love to be able to do that too. It's more than just that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I love people that can just read something and just take action and make something happen. It's a very rare trait. But every once in a while you hear about those stories, right? It's just like action right away, results right away. And I'm like, wow, I wish things came that easy. I really do. Where's the button? That was easy. So yeah, would I have liked to have left earlier? Yes. But to be honest, Adam, in reflecting on this, and if I'm being perfectly transparent with you, the person I was 2 years prior when I first having those feelings to the person I was when I finally left were two very different people.
Yeah.
Because in those 2 years, I had very focused time outside of my career that was based on building the foundation. So when I did transition away, I wasn't going to something that wasn't going to at least provide for the minimum requirements my family needed.
Yeah.
I needed that confidence. I needed to be sure that, I wasn't going to put my family into a bad position by making this choice.
Yeah.
And what was very useful, and this is what I encourage people to do, is get really clear on what you want versus what you need.
Mm-hmm.
So I do recognize that some people are in positions where they're careered salaried position with amazing benefits, maybe even an amazing pension.
Mm-hmm.
Stepping away from something like that would be a lot more challenging, I believe, than what I stepped away from. And I like to acknowledge that, because there's a lot of other things that you've built there. And to just walk away from that, that is a very big piece. I know a number of people in the online space, and some of them still have government jobs, and they're like, I'll never leave it. It's just, it is the comfort and the confidence that they want for their family, even though they hate what they're doing.
Yeah.
They've told me, I hate it. I don't like it. I receive zero enjoyment from this. I've been doing it so long, but I'm never going to leave it. I can't, that's the language. Like that's their language.
Yeah.
That's a scary place to be.
Yeah.
And that was a place ultimately I didn't want to be. And so just going through the steps of getting really clear on, well, how much money do I need?
Yeah.
Do I need a little bit of a cushion in the bank? How much do I really need? How much do we need to actually do what we want to do? Mm-hmm. And do it in a way that I'm not stressed. I'm not anxious.
Yeah.
And
it's not you're not paycheck for paycheck. Yeah.
No, exactly. And when I figured out what that number was, and we got pretty honest with that, we realized it was a fraction of what we were spending in our old lifestyle.
Yeah.
With our place downtown, 2 vehicles, all the insurances, food and transport and kids activity, like, geez, it piled up, and we realized that this other lifestyle where we were going to be together at full time, traveling, experiencing communities and other countries, we realized it was going to be far less than what we were requiring to live the life that we were living. So it was like, it became much, it felt like I took off a heavy backpack. I was like, oh, okay, well, I feel a lot lighter about this because I feel I realize that this is something I can do.
Yeah.
And I think we need that confidence to really transition fully, like to make that full leap and trust in the process, trust that journey, that is going to be okay. It's nice to have that foundational confidence in place. And so those are just little exercises, little things I invite people to start to have conversations with those people in your family that will be impacted by the decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like you brought up a good like I love the word lifestyle, right? Like when you're
Mm,
looking at like what lifestyle do you currently have, and yeah, you can separate into the to needs and wants. Like what do you need, what do you want? And when you look at like, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
yeah,
When you
yeah.
figure out that, but there's different levels of shelter, right? So like shelter could be you own $1 million mansion, or
Mm,
maybe in Toronto it'd be
yeah.
like $4 million mansion because a
Right.
million dollars might buy you a townhouse. But $1 million, you know, a few $1 million for a mansion. Some people it's a townhouse. Some people it's just renting a space, a condo, um, right? So like figuring out what do you actually need for shelter, right?
Yes.
And like there's places in the world where shelter is much cheaper than other
Hmm.
places of the world.
Correct.
And then, you know, look at all the other things with regards to like food and security and all those as you kind of move your way up that ladder, right? um, I think that's a great kind of walkthrough, because when you look at behavioral change, lifestyle is always like how are you changing this for life, not just like a quick little fix, as you said, instant gratification to get what you need, and then kind of it's fizzles out and it's gone, right? Like you have to, as you said,
Yes.
you have to have a plan, you have to be at the right point, you have to understand what that process, and you talked about your 4 P's, your passion, your purpose, and then the actual like what is the process, like what is the
Yes.
actual program or whatever that you're going to do, whether it's in business or in life. So I love that.
Real quick on that, I think you brought up a valid point. I think a lot of us spend a lot of time on talking about where we want to live and how we want to live. You know, those are big priorities. But when you actually start with, well, why do you want to live? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like there's, you'll find that it influences those other two
Yeah.
greatly, but it also gives us that extra confidence to commit to that. You know, I know when I think back on it, it's when I think about that why question. You know, it always reminds me of Mark Twain. He had a quote that said, you know, there's the two most important days of our life are one, the day we're born, and two, the day we figure out why.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it always resonates, so it is still a big piece for us. It's like, well, why are we doing anything? Like, so it's that internal dialogue. It's those
Mm-hmm.
questions that we ask ourselves that are often the most guiding questions that we could be asking, and not always easy to answer. That's the problem with why questions.
Yeah.
They aren't easy to answer. They take time. You got to reflect on it. You got to think about it. You got to be sure about it. You know, you
Yeah.
got to trust that instinct in you that it is the right decision. And then there is a little bit of faith that's involved, right?
Yeah.
Or hope. But yeah, I liked how you put that. I think it was really well said. And yeah, ask yourself, well, why do I want to live first, and then figure out where and how.
Yeah.
But I think when you start to look at your options, you'll realize, yeah, there's developing countries out there where the quality of life is, in my opinion, in Bali, the quality of life was on par, if not greater, in some situations, versus what we were getting in Canada.
Yeah.
Yet at less than half the cost.
Yeah.
You know, so wow, hello, that's there's some options here, you
Yeah.
know. And if it means uprooting my family to move to a developing country, well, it's a choice that we were willing to experiment with and see what happened.
Yeah.
And we are back for education purposes. I'm back in Vancouver now. We moved back pre-COVID. It was not anything influenced based on the pandemic.
Yeah.
We'd already made the decision to relocate back, only because our kids wanted to finish their schooling, their high school in Vancouver. It was
Yeah.
going to be a lot easier for post-secondary and moving in, because international
Yeah.
schools, there's a lot of other red tape you got to get through. So
Yeah.
we're back for them
Yeah.
specifically, and it's great. We like it, we love it, but it was a
Yeah.
choice, and you know, and that's why I like to let people know that. And like, yeah, we're not traveling right now.
Yeah.
We're back for a period of time,
Yeah.
and it's okay. We're fine with that. Like,
Yeah.
we love that. We've also I have people ask me all the time, well, do you miss Bali? I'm like, well, of course I miss Bali. Like, I miss my friends, I miss my communities, I miss my lifestyle that I had there.
Yeah.
But I love Vancouver, and I
Yeah.
love where our family is. We're together. We're on the same page. We're all working towards something, and we're here to help each other do it. You know,
Yeah.
so I mean, you can put us anywhere, and we'll make it work.
Yeah.
And I think it's that resiliency. I want people to feel confident that it's in them. Everybody has this ability to be resilient.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the human species are top of the food chain.
Yeah.
You know, because we are resilient. We adapt,
Yeah.
either very quickly or very slowly.
Yeah.
It is completely up to us.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, and I think just continue with that, the change piece, right? Like
Mm,
change for a lot of people is scary.
right.
And I look at, like, I love change because change is novel. It's something new. It's something exciting.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when we first talked, when you were heading over to Bali and you were going
Mhm.
and doing that, and we talked about it, like that's phenomenal. And then I was following a lot of the videos that you were doing on social media
Yep.
and seeing kind of what you're doing, and like it almost makes the person who's over here thinking, man, I'd love to do something like that,
Yeah.
right? Like a
Yeah.
pool in the backyard, I remember the glass kitchen doors that
Yes.
just kind
Yeah.
of, oh my gosh.
Bali.
Yeah. And you're just like, it looks like a vacation almost permanently. Like, I know it's not, there's still business going on. There's still education. There's still all those things, but it was changed and it was exciting. But moving back
Yeah.
to Canada, like Canada's exciting too. Right.
Right.
Like, especially like, I love the West. Like I love Vancouver. I love Calgary. I love Banff. Like you're in Whistler right now. Like I love mountains. To me, like I love
Yeah.
mountains, I love
Yeah.
ocean. I can't pick. When people are like, which one would you rather, I'm like, have you been to the mountains? Like,
Yeah.
can I have both? Yeah.
Exactly. And you
But
can.
yeah, but I think that change and then being comfortable with that
Mm,
is something that for some people is difficult. They like
right.
routine, they like getting comfortable, and you have to be able to have that ability to change and be, as you said, adaptable to different situations as
Mm,
they come up. So what I want to talk about now is, as I said at the very beginning, you were the first person
mm,
who I ever heard the word tribe from.
mm,
And I just wanted you to go into, like, what do you mean when you say tribe, just for the listeners who
mm.
maybe don't understand what that is, and why it's so important to have one? Because I know you talked about personal
Yeah.
and corporate branding, but just talk about the word tribe and what that means for you and your following.
Well, so tribe, and just to give you some background on that, and even the term, like I had heard people like Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, I think Amy Porterfield. There's a number of like just amazing thought leaders in the digital space,
Mm-hmm.
and especially Seth Godin. He's got a book I think called Tribes. I'm trying to remember if that was the title of the book that I read, but he makes. If anybody follows Seth Godin, or if you don't, I would encourage you to follow him.
Yeah.
He's a prolific content creator,
Yeah.
and he's someone that recognizes trends, and he speaks to those trends, and he tries to dive deeper into it and really figure out, well, why is this even happening?
Mm-hmm.
And because once you understand how to read trends, you can start to see trends before they even happen, right?
Yeah.
You start to recognize there's patterns here. But there's one consistent thing in all these trends. There's always a community there,
Yeah.
that either adopt the new trend or the new way of being or the newest thing. There's a community around that. There's a tribe of people. And when you think tribe and community, they are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about tribe, there's an older history to tribe, right? I mean, you go back before technology became a thing, it was all based on these tight communities.
Yeah.
Like I just think about the blue zones as a primary example. The
Yeah.
blue zones, Dan Butner's research, just amazing. These little pockets, these 5 little places around the world where people live to be 100 or older. They have greater density of people living to that age than any other place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
5 of these little hot spots, right? Or they call them the blue zones. But when you look at that community, tribe is one of the 9 factors that they attribute to why they have this longevity.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something there. There's something to that.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, right, you have people like Bronnie Ware, who wrote The 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the top 5 regrets that she found in the people that she asked, she was someone that would tend to people. She was a end of life practitioner. She would support people during those final periods of life. Just basically people waiting to pass on, and she would have these conversations, and there was 5 recurring regrets.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost every single person she talked to, is there any regrets? Any things that you wish that you did? And almost every single person, same 5.
Yeah.
One of them was, I wish I'd stayed in touch with those that I care about.
Mm-hmm.
With those that were closest to me. I wish I kept in touch with my friends, my family.
Yeah.
Again, that alludes to this relationship piece, this community piece, this tribal piece. And what happens when we don't have it? We miss it. We are social beings.
Yeah.
We're not beings being social.
Yeah.
And I think these are really important things to remember. and to reconnect with and not fight.
Yeah.
So when we start thinking about tribes, it's nothing new. Community development is nothing new, but the way we do it is different than what we used to do 10, 20, 30 years ago. You know, I look at Toastmasters as a prime example of how a tribe of people that are looking to be better leaders and better communicators pivoted so quickly when they could no longer be in person with their events. They went to Zoom. You know, they went to online. There was a lot of people that didn't make the leap initially, but have now come to adopt that. But they were very quick to pivot. They just had their international convention, which has never been done online. It's always an in-person event, 3 days. You know, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a global Toastmaster event. They have hundreds of thousands of clubs around the world, you know, and they all went online to this virtual event. That is something that they never would have even imagined before, you know? So, you know, most of the limits that we create are just based on us being so accustomed to doing things the way we used to, without believing that we could reinvent or rediscover new ways of doing them. And I think so developing tribe is very important, because without a tribe, without a community, you can't really have a brand.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. I mean, I guess if you want to just sell it to your friends and family, great. There's already an existing relationship there. But if you want to go beyond that, you got to connect with people on a much deeper level.
Yeah.
You know, and there's usually common interests. And what are those common interests? Maybe it's a common journey. You know, like I look at the fitness industry, it's really easy to see how we've commoditized ourselves. You know, like everyone's selling. I saw a lot of trainers go very quickly to their Facebook as soon as the gyms closed, or as soon as they couldn't train people in person, that they were trying to pivot very, very quickly to monetizing now their businesses online through digital means versus in person, because they had to. And I saw a lot of people just spraying the internet with sales messages. Right. And I mean, we're in a pandemic. Do you think people want to be sold personal training right now? Like it's interesting, but there was a fear response there guiding that decision, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my goodness, my income's gone to zero overnight. What the hell am I going to do? And I'm just going to blast my social media because I got some connections and offer up some services. But the connection's not there. The story's not there. The reasoning behind the ask is not there. And usually it's because the know, like, and trust has not been developed deep enough.
Yeah.
And so in developing community, even leveraging like a private Facebook group, a private WhatsApp feed, or a messenger feed with certain individuals that are expressed, hey, I have this same challenge and I want to work towards a solution to allow me to feel this way. Because it usually always comes down to what's in it for me, right? There's a connection there. When you're part of a community, why are you a part of that community? There's a motivation for you to be a part of it.
Yeah.
What is that motivation? And you'll probably find that if you ask everybody else in that community, they probably have a similar motivation. There's a similar itch that they want to itch, and that's why they're there. And it could be a certain type of support, but at the end of the day, there's a result that's being created, right? You being there. You know, I mean, why do I join Toastmasters 11 years ago? Because I wanted to be a better communicator.
Yeah.
I want to be a more effective leader. And I knew that being able to speak in front of a group, whether it's 5 people or 500 people, I needed to work that skill.
Yeah.
I needed to develop that. I needed a community to support me through that process. And there it was. There was a Toastmasters tribe that I could align with. And they've helped me. It's been instrumental. I would not be here having this conversation with you had I not made that commitment 11 years ago to step foot into my first Toastmasters meeting. I guarantee it. I wouldn't be on this call with you. I just wouldn't be, because I wouldn't have gone down the path that I did that has led me to where I am today.
Yeah.
So it's so impactful. These little communities that we think are small, but they are actually huge. Doesn't matter how small they are. It can pivot things in your life very quickly if you allow it to, and if you align with the right group. So yeah, with tribe, with community, you can call it a client base, you can call it a voting base. You know, voters are also a community that support a common outcome, right? So when you look around your life, you'll probably see there's tribes everywhere. Little pockets of communities aligned with a similar want or desire or passion or need. You know, there's lots of similarities, and it's just a matter of figuring out, well, what do you want to stand for?
Yeah.
You know, what is your polarizing position within the fitness industry?
Yeah.
Did you see that article that talked about the court? I think it's more of a fake news type thing, but they were making fun of that they've made burpees illegal. don't know if you saw that article, but they were
No.
talking about there's a court decision made in this little country that burpees are now illegal. You can do them on your own, but it's illegal for trainers to program it.
Yeah.
Illegal for people to program burpees and make you do burpees against your will. It was really funny, but it went viral. But you know, it could be a community of people that are anti-burpees, whatever. Like, there's lots of fun stuff out there, right?
I find them so painful. I might agree with that. So.
Yeah, right. But so yeah, that's where I was going with that. And for myself, you know, I got my first taste of this many years ago when I was just starting to build my online platform. I remember my wife and I, we had this conversation one morning. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to launch an online challenge. It's going to be the 300 a day challenge. I'm going to invite people to do 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, and 100 squats every day for 30 days. And so it was all body weight based, no equipment required. You can do it anytime, anywhere. It doesn't really matter. And it was cumulative in the day. So it's not like you have to sit there and do 300 reps all at once. I was just like, you know, take little breaks throughout the day and just do like 5, 5, 5, you know, and do 20 sets of that throughout the day, or 10, 10, 10, and do 10 sets of that throughout the day. Either way, I just said, just get some basic activity in there.
Yeah.
I threw it out on Facebook, created an event page, invited like 50 people that I knew that I thought might be into it. Next thing you know, we had 1,400 people within 48 hours say, I'm doing this. And we encouraged people to post their photos of wherever they were doing it around the world. I had people on the Parthenon, you know, freaking over, you know, halfway across the world.
Yeah.
Doing push-ups on the steps, you know, or their sit-ups. Like it was wild. It was all over the place. And it was people that came together saying, listen, I want to align with a cause and share that with others.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see how it aligned and everybody was supporting each other. And it was just having fun with it. And it involved fitness as well. And right away, I was like, wow, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think there's something to this. I think, you know, there's more to this. And then it just sort of spun out from there. You know, I just really got obsessed with creating communities and community initiatives and bringing people that had a common goal or challenge that they wanted to solve.
Yeah.
Notice that, like, and I always say this, people come up with products all the time, and I'm looking at all these trainers that are trying to be like, lose weight. I'm like, lose weight? It's a benefit that anybody's going to have working with any trainer. And if you're not having that benefit, then I wonder, well, what are you doing? You know, like that's a different conversation. But to just say you lose weight and make that your main thing, it's just like, that's what I'm talking about, commodity. There's no differentiation there. Yeah. There's no reason for me to align with that message than with anybody else. It's saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's finding that thing that people can align to. You know, I always say one problem, one solution. Yep. Actually, he's in Toronto. I don't know if you've talked to Yuri Elkim. I used to remember that. He's like, it's sort of that, I quote him in a lot of my presentations only because I remember the one question that he would always ask is like, what would you have to do to make it impossible for your clients not to get results? Mm-hmm. You know, and that's a great question to ask oneself. And so I say, like, when you create a product or you create a service offering, you're going to create a community of people that you're going to support in a certain way. Well, what is the one problem that you're going to have a one kick-ass solution with, you know, and you're going to get known for that solution. Yeah. And so it helped me with my marketing as well, getting very clear on what was I putting out there? What was I inviting people to say yes to? Yeah. Notice I'm not trying to sell people on anything. Trying to invite them to make a decision. And if the decision's important to them because the result's important to them, awesome. Then get out of your own way, say yes, and just start doing something about it, you know? Like, and you'll find that as you build this community, these people are already connected to other people that are similar. Yeah. You know, and I still do everything organically. Like people are like, well, what's your paid marketing strategy? I'm like, well, I don't have one. Like, I just don't. Yeah. That's why I may not grow as fast as a lot of other online marketers. But I'll tell you, when I'm okay with that. Yeah. I wasn't looking for rapid growth. I'm looking for continuous, constant, dependable growth. Yeah. And that's why I prefer the organic method. And if you do both, that's awesome. More of a hybrid, but we can talk about that later. But so that's sort of the piece on community. But Adam, I look at you and you've been building community one event at a time for years and years, to the point now that, you are very well known in the space that you serve. Yeah. And you have a community of people that have benefited from what you've taught. Yeah. And in turn, this podcast is another extension of building a community of people that have a desire to see improvement in certain areas of their life. Yeah. And professionally and personally. Yeah. So it's amazing because this is how change happens. Yeah. You know, so but look up Seth Godin and Tribes. And I think he's got some great blog articles on it, especially. So you don't, and he's done amazing podcast interviews where he
Yeah.
talks about this, and he has a way more eloquent and more detailed response than I do. But I'm just referring from my own perspective and what I've experienced. So please take that to heart and realize there's people out there that have a lot more knowledge on this than I do.
Yeah.
But just start building community. That's the
Yeah.
best thing I can recommend to anybody.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people getting in is they don't necessarily understand how, like, the steps to take to create community, right? Because as you said, some of them are like, okay, well, I'm going to be a weight loss coach, so that's going to be my thing. So then everything that you post is about, want to lose weight, here's some training, here's how you lose weight here, like, and you give a few little tips here and there. But as you said, like, there's so many people around talking about weight loss.
Yes.
And like, I wouldn't even be the one who'd say that I'm the expert on weight loss, because there's probably people out there who know far more about weight loss, whether having experienced it personally, having had a whole amount, like a large amount of success with clients previously, both whether it be virtually or in person.
Yeah.
And so I would be like, well, that's not my specialty. And really fine tuning. And this is something that I talked to Alex, who I was talking about the PTDC when I did his interview. We talked about that as like narrowing in on like, what is your target, like your target market that you want to go after. And so can you just speak to, for somebody who maybe doesn't have a tribe, it doesn't have necessarily a community or a following yet, maybe they were just an in-person trainer, all they had was a personal account on Instagram where they just, maybe it was private and it was only just friends and family that they invited in. How do they then step from that point into creating this community of people and like attract people who think the same way, who are potential future clients down the road, when you do end up saying, well, hey, if you're really interested in this, I do have this, right? And starting to monetize perhaps some of that community. How would you get somebody to start that community?
Well, I won't go too deep down this one, only because I do have that. I've got a free 3-hour workshop people can watch, and I apologize. It's 3 hours. It's a whole lot of, as Adam said right at the beginning. Sometimes when you see me speak or present, I forget I've got a lot of years on this stuff, and I just like dump it. But I've got something called my first 10 client framework or blueprint, and it goes into, like, if you were just starting from scratch, or even just in the early stages of developing this. Let's just say it's an online portion of your business. I'm not saying you're building an online business, but maybe it's something that's going to be a hybrid. So you're going to have a little bit offline and a bit online. It will give you direction and tips on best ways to start that and some of the best practices. And but I know for myself, especially if I frame this, like, if I was to go back and start again, what would I do? I would instantly probably want to survey my existing audience, and this would include people I'm connected with on WhatsApp, in my cell phone that I have, like, on iMessage. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just people I personally know. I would basically, rather than having one-on-one conversations, I would create a simple survey. You could use Google Forms. Really easy to create, something really basic, something easy that people can fill out in 60 to 90 seconds. But things that identify or help people identify where they have challenges in their life, especially as it relates to the potential niche that I'm considering focusing on. Right. And notice I said that, like, if you're going to do just a broad survey talking about a lot of different things, that's not going to help anybody.
What should I specialize in?
Yes. Don't leave that off. You probably already have something that you do really well and you do better than most. And I always say, like, figure out what is that secret sauce that you have that is your secret sauce. And if you're not sure what that is, well, there's exercises you can go through to explore and pull that out. We don't have time to talk about that today, but there is a way to sort of get that from you. It takes a little bit longer because it's an act of discovery, not invention, as Simon Sinek would say. So it takes a bit of time. But if you have a general idea of what you're really good at already, well, I would craft a survey, or I call it more of an interview, an online interview, right? With individuals to find out if you're on the right path. These ideas that you have and these concepts that you have, these pains that you believe people have that they want to solve, are you actually accurate on that.
Yeah.
These assumptions is again validation. And the nice thing is that in that I usually have at the end of my survey a couple of very specific invitational questions. And they're questions that say, listen, I'm in the process of, thanks for taking the time to give me your input. I really value that. And if you're open to me having a deeper conversation or asking you more questions on this, just leave your name and email here. And I'd love to reach out to ask you more questions later if I have any.
Yeah.
And then I'll follow that up. If there was a program that did this, this, and this, that provided you this, this, and this type of result, and this ties back to the initial questions I asked. So if they've already answered the questions in a certain way, saying, yeah, I have a challenge with scheduling time for my workouts. I really don't understand how to fuel myself for optimal performance and life performance. And, I'll have certain questions that are very specific to the program or niche I want to serve. And it's just a little invitation. Would you be interested in more information on what that looks like when I finally develop it?
Yeah.
Yes, no, or maybe. And I've always found that. And it's funny how Pareto principle just shows up all over the place. The 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
And it's almost always 80% say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Almost always. Now, of those, I would then reach out to, and I would have a follow-up conversation with them and just review some of the questions that they'd answered and say, well, here's what I'm developing. This is what it's going to look like. And would you be interested, in being a beta tester?
Yeah.
And it's a small nominal fee, and I would usually present it. I wouldn't ever give it for free.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did in the beginning.
Yeah.
And if I could go back, I would have put a little nominal amount, not a huge amount, but something that people could say yes to, but it'll be enough skin in the game that they'll treat it seriously.
Yeah.
So I would usually say, for the cost of what it would be for one PT session, if you're a personal trainer, make it the cost of what one session with you would be like in person.
Yeah.
It's a good place to start. And then provide them a certain process that they can plug into.
Yeah.
For a set duration. Maybe it's a 4-week, maybe it's an 8-week, 12-week, I don't know, 30 days. You got to figure out some of these logistical pieces. But I would find from those conversations, 80-20 again would happen.
Yeah.
In some cases, it was 80% saying no, 20% saying, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
But I've also had certain ones where it's been my most recent, I did a launch last, you see, the neat thing is sort of just to allude to what you can build if you start to have these types of habits and you start to work this. And I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but as you build a community and a tribe of people that are aware of what you do, you've been delivering lots of value to. So they have a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings about you because you've helped them a lot. You've either inspired them, you've motivated them, you've educated them, you've entertained them, but you've just done what you do very well, and they know who you are, and they trust you.
Yeah.
Last summer, I put out a call, just one single post on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and it just shared a little bit of my story about being a dad in his 40s and being the fittest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
And that normally family commitments are the excuse of why we can't maintain certain levels of health.
Yeah.
Where I wanted to flip that and challenge people to have the other opinion where kids, family, life is actually the reason why I want to be healthy.
Yeah.
And it was a simple call to action that, hey, I've got a program. It's called the Dad Body Project. I'm looking for some guys to potentially commit to this process. It'll be a 12-week commitment.
Yeah.
If you're interested in learning more, just comment below or send me a private message on Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
I had about 24 inquiries, scheduled 16 calls, made 12 sales. It was, $23,000 in revenue within 7 days from one Facebook post, right? Like I'm not saying this to brag. I'm not saying this to be boastful. I'm just sharing that this process can be reiterated in many different ways once you've built trust with your community, but also you have to be very confident that you can produce a result for a client.
Yeah.
That is the underlying factor.
Yeah.
If you can't help your client produce results, as Yuri always says, what do I need to do to make it impossible for my clients not to get results?
Yeah.
You can't figure that out. I'm not here to say don't start developing your own online programs and products and services and business. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying don't rush into it.
Yeah.
There's some things that you're probably going to want to figure out and iron out beforehand. And that's where the survey and the questionnaire process can help you gain clarity. But I say don't waste the opportunity because there is a way to find out who is already that low-hanging fruit or the interested parties, right? Like there's people in our networks already that are probably ready to be a client of ours. Everyone has this. And I don't care how small it is or how big your audience is. I know there's people there that are probably already ready. If they already knew that there was even an invitation or an opportunity to work with you, would probably want to work with you.
Yeah.
They just don't know it yet.
Yep.
And so it's developing the messaging and the content that not only develops the knowledge of you, but it allows people to start to like you and trust you, and eventually, it sounds a little cheesy, but love you too. Like they really love what you stand for and how you show up, and that can be very powerful. It can be very influential, but it can also make it a lot easier for people to just say, "Yes, I trust you. I'm in. Help me. Thank you." And dude, there's no greater feeling than that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if did that answer your question?
Yeah. That was great.
Good.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, oh, did this actually answer the original question? What was the original question? I don't even remember. So I thought I'd better ask.
No, and I like the plug too. So, because you mentioned that you have the my first 10 clients framework. That is that 3 hour, and I've actually done that before with you. I think I was like one of the first times you ever did that.
Yes,
I was invited to be a part of that. And for anybody listening, if you haven't, whether you're in the fitness industry or not, whatever it is, if you want to monetize something virtually, or monetize a product, like take it and just like he walks through everything about what you can do from the start to the end, and then really gives you, like as it says, a good framework for the steps to take in order to be successful, so that you don't trip up, you don't make the same mistakes that I made when I first started, that Dai made when he first started.
I'm still making. It's okay.
Still making. So if you'd have a chance, definitely go and do that, or reach out to Dai, and like on Instagram or Facebook, and he'll be more than happy to set you up for that.
Like I said, it's a free 3-hour workshop too, so people can dive into that and have fun with it, and be ready to take a lot of notes. But I've had a number of people reach out to me that have only ever done the free workshop. I've never worked with them personally. They sent me a few questions here and there, and I love that stuff. But they just took what I taught and applied it to what they were trying to do. And I've had a number of very nice emails that have come through saying, I can't believe it. I've generated an extra $2,000 a month revenue since I've done your workshop. And I love that. Like it's not rocket science. Okay. This is very accessible to anybody and everybody. But it just takes time. It just takes time. Just, like, God, I hate the cliches, but I keep throwing them down because it's what we resonate with too, right? But it is a journey, right? It's not a sprint. It's a marathon, as they say. And if you're okay with that, and you're good at pacing, and you're okay with the tempo, man, you can create whatever you want to create. But just make sure it aligns with that passion and the purpose, because if it doesn't, it's really hard to sustain it. You're going to get back into that same situation where it's like you start dreading what you're doing. And it's like, oh, that's the last thing you want, right?
And I love actually we'll finish part one here with the quote that you keep saying about what can I do? So asking the question, what can I do to make it impossible for you not to be successful, for you not to reach your goal? And I love that, because I use that whether I'm working with a client, whether it's virtually or in person. So I ask them, what can I do to make it impossible for you to fail? So if you've got a goal of weight loss, muscle mass gain, or if it's even more extreme towards what I'm actually really good at, which is either high level sports performance or injury rehabilitation, like what can I do to make sure it's impossible for you to fail? Or even in class, right? Like I teach at Centennial College. So talking to the students, like, so this is the start of the semester, and this semester is going to be really weird because it's all online. But what can I do as the instructor, as your mentor throughout this course? What can I do to make it impossible for you to fail? Right. Outside of giving you all of the answers for every test and every assignment, right? Like, without being a softie, what can I do as an instructor, as an educator, to help you be successful? And I love just asking that question in every situation. Ask your wife, what can I do to make it impossible for me to fail as a husband, as a father, right? Like, asking that question, I think is a phenomenal blanket for a lot of things that a lot of people just don't want to ask. I think often because they're scared of the answer.
Right.
Right. they're scared that you're going to say something that either you don't feel as though you're capable of doing, or it's going to be something that is just so extraordinary. You're like, what did I sign up for here? But I love that. So thank you for bringing that up. I always wondered where that quote came from, because I've heard it many times before and I've started to use it myself. So thanks for bringing that up. But
yeah, no worries. And just again, like Yuri Elkame of Healthpreneur. If you look up Healthpreneur, you'll see him, and he's a local Toronto guy. Like, so it's another Canuck, yay!
Yeah.
But I also know, like, because PTDC, you talked about that, and I know him and Jonathan are quite good friends. And yeah, it's actually how I met Jonathan was at an event that Yuri hosted.
Oh, okay.
And that's actually where that connection actually originated many years ago. But anyway, so I do want to make sure that he gets credit for that quote. And but it's been very instrumental in my life and businesses. And I'm glad to hear that it resonates.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I want to get into a lot more about specifically about social media, about laying out kind of the process for monetization, automation, like all those types of things. Sure. But we will do that in part 2. So we'll see you later.
Great. Sweet.
State of the Industry Podcast.
I'll be back.